Hey, Kevin, come and record the Drift ad.
Today's episode is brought to you by Drift Outfitters in downtown Toronto, Ontario. Drift Outfitters is your source for all things fly fishing. From waders and boots to threads and feathers, Drift has it all. Check in on your website for the latest updates and policies regarding shopping during the pandemic. Curbside pickup for your online and phone orders is a great way to get the gear you need. And they're shipping for free across Canada on orders over $100. Visit driftoutfitters.com to learn more.
Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is the middle of February and we're recording another show. My name is Mitch. We've got Aldo.
Hello.
And we've got Yelma.
Hello, everyone.
And we're super excited to be talking to Gord Ellis today. Gord is a lifelong resident of Thunder Bay, Ontario, and a full-time journalist, a broadcaster, a pro angler, and a guide. And he's also the senior editor of Ontario Out of Doors magazine, which you should absolutely grab the latest copy to read our article about Esnagami Lodge. But this is not about us. Gord is an angler, is a regular on CBC's Radio Superior Morning, and writes a monthly column on Ontario for the Northern Wilds magazine in Minnesota. He's written over 1,000 feature articles and columns for publications. He's a longtime member of the Outdoor Writers of Canada and has won better than 25 national awards for his writing and photography. In 2018, Gord was inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame in Hayward, Wisconsin. But today he is on our podcast. Gord, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. Where are you calling in from? Thunder Bay?
Thunder Bay, Ontario, where it's a balmy minus 35 this morning. And it's been like that for about 8 days. And it's made for some wicked hibernation. But hey, it's, when you live in the north, it's part of the deal. It's like flies in the summer, right? It's just cold as a thing in Northwestern Ontario, so
makes for some good ice fishing, though. I can imagine.
Yeah, good solid ice right now.
Yeah,
well, that's good. We have a Hall of Famer. This is our first Hall of Famer. You're a Hall of Famer.
So excited.
Yeah, I am actually. That happened about 3 years ago, and it was a really neat thing. It was nothing I ever thought would ever happen, but a guy named Jay Dampier, actually, who's originally from Nipigon, and then moved to Thunder Bay, and then ended up in Wisconsin. He's a professor in Wisconsin. He went to the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, and he sent me a message after he went and said, "Gord, you should be in here." And I said, "Well, Jay, you're a lovely guy and everything." He said, "No, you should be in here." So he actually nominated me and got some other people to help out, and
it's awesome.
I got voted into the National Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, which was a pretty surreal experience, let me tell you.
I bet. Was it like a big event like that you went to, or?
So I went to Minneapolis, and they had an induction ceremony. They do different ones around most of the inductees are in the States.
Yeah.
I think that year I was the only Canadian, actually. There are some other Canadians. I believe Gord Piser's in there, and probably Bob Azumi, but
right.
So they do different induction ceremonies in different parts of the States. And I went to a sports show in Minneapolis, and they had an induction ceremony, and they introduced you. And there was a couple other people who were there as well for induction. And you have to do a speech.
The whole thing.
All these industry people were there. It was pretty fun, actually. And it was my parents came, and my wife came down. So it was a neat thing. Yeah, it was a great honor, and it's a very humbling thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have to go down there and check it out. Do you have like a picture on the wall? Like, how does it work?
I have a little plaque. I have a plaque on the wall.
Oh, nice.
It says, inducted into the National Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. And there's, I guess, at Hayward, they have an area where there's, you're there, and it's also on their website. They have a bunch of others. I've never actually been to Hayward, so it's on my list to go down there and check it out. Apparently, it's quite the place. Pretty neat.
Is there amazing fishing there? Yeah, it's good. Like, why is the
Hayward's like a muskie mecca.
Oh, okay.
It's really well known for its muskie fishing. So, in fact, at Hayward, there's a giant muskie that you can walk inside.
Oh, man.
And stand in its mouth. One of those things, right? Awesome. Which is really cool. But I have to go there. And a few people that I've guided have been there and said, "Oh yeah, no, you got to check it out." I mean, it's really cool. They have
Oh,
all
man.
sorts of historic stuff.
I love it. Well, okay, we're going to talk about, all about your fly fishing life and how you got into fly fishing, but we also want to talk, obviously, about fishing and fly fishing around the Thunder Bay region, and dive deeper into the brook trout of the Nipigon, because we've heard all about, everybody's heard about Nipigon brook trout. They're huge fish. They're incredible fish, and we've even talked about one trip to the Nipigon taken by some former guests and friends of the show. And they were just telling us stories about, monster pike and just ridiculous pike fishing. And of course, also some of the brook trout, which have just, completely encapsulated us. But, apart from the Nipigon, we also want to chat a little bit about Superior and Lake Superior, because we haven't really talked that much about Lake Superior, but it'd be really cool to hear it because, we've heard some stories about fishing Lake Superior, and really it sounds kind of like a coastal ocean or something, like something so foreign to what we do here in Toronto.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, like I said, let's just jump into maybe a little bit about your angler, as your journey as an angler and your fishing kind of story. So, like, how did you get into fishing? How did it all begin for you?
I come from a long line of anglers. My father is a very keen angler. My father and mother are both still alive, and my father still is my primary fishing partner at 82 years old.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, nice.
He is an amazing angler, an incredible person. Anyway, so I started extremely young. I mean, before I could walk, I was fishing, basically. My parents brought me out fishing. And, my earliest memories are fishing, like going down to a creek, either with my dad or with the friends and fishing for brook trout. There's a creek I still live pretty close to called McVicker Creek, which is still a great cold water fishery, 50 plus years later. I just had a passion for it. And as soon as I could fish by myself, I did. And I fished almost every day during the summer. I would go fishing, and I'd go by myself or go with my brother or go with a buddy or with my dad or whoever. And I fished, and everything about fishing excited me. The water, catching fish, seeing fish. I mean, I spent hours watching fish, just how they reacted, throw a grasshopper in and see how a brook trout would come up and take it. I love bass. We have quite a lot of bass fishing in Northwestern Ontario. And so I became quite the little skin diver and would watch bass underwater and flip rocks over, and get the crayfish going and see how they reacted to it. And it was just, the whole thing fascinated me. So I've always been an angler and always was interested in multi-species. I mean, I'm primarily a trout guy, but I spent more than 20 years fishing bass tournaments up here. Did tons of bass fishing. I love pike fishing. I musky fish, salmon. I fly fish, obviously. I pretty much do everything I can fishing wise. And one of the cool things about Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario is we have just about everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And incredible fishing. Like even just in Thunder Bay, we have so much good fishing here. I could just stay here and fish. I don't. I go to Nipigon or Lake of the Woods or whatever too. But we have so much opportunity here. I'm an ambassador for Northwestern Ontario. It is such a cool place to live if you're an angler. So anyway, I've fished my whole life. The only really breaks I took, I spent some time going to school in London, Ontario, and there wasn't a lot of fishing. But as soon as I could get back into it in my early 20s, I was right back in. And then I sort of just ended up making a career out of it, at least in part. I created a career for myself in the outdoors in a funny way.
It's a pretty awesome way to make a living.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, it's been very varied, and I've worked very hard, but I've loved it, and I still love it. I'm still doing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
When did the writing come along in terms of the fishing career?
So I always liked writing. In fact, I wasn't the greatest student necessarily, but I was pretty good at expressing myself. I can remember my report cards when I was in public school. It would say, Gordon needs to pay more attention in class, and he's not very good at math, and whatever. but he can express himself, and he's good at that, and writing. And that was always one of the things I could do. And so that ended up becoming something I did. In high school, I wrote for the high school paper. I did music columns, actually. I love music. That's my other big passion is music.
Oh, nice.
And I still write a music column here in Thunder Bay.
Oh, that's awesome. You're preaching you're talking to a good little crowd here. I mean, I don't play any instruments, but I love music.
Well,
we're all new
I
music nerds too.
I actually have two guitars sitting here. We're in my rec room, and I sort of take it over with all my junk. But so anyway, the writing part of it, and I always read fishing magazines. My dad bought Outdoor Life, and Field and Stream, and Sports Afield. Those were the big three back then. And I read them cover to cover. I was literally the kid under the covers,
Yeah.
And then I read Out of Doors, actually, when Out of Doors started. It started as a newsprint, basically a newspaper. I can remember reading that and reading, people like John Kerr and all these, and I was always interested. I never thought of it as a career. And then sometime in the early 80s, there was a advertisement for a field editor for a new fishing magazine in Northwestern Ontario. And even though, I was interested in the outdoors and everything, I didn't really think about applying. Everybody I knew told me I should apply for it. I think at the time I was working as a land surveyor.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
So I applied for the job and I got it. And I was, in retrospect, I was so incredibly green. I knew nothing, I was unqualified for the job. I really was, except that I could fish.
Aren't we all?
And I had some, very raw writing talent.
Yeah.
Anyway, the magazine only lasted a year. It failed, but I got the taste for it. And then I ended up starting to send articles out. I think one of the first articles I sold was Outdoor Canada, which is amazing when I think back, because I went from 0 to 60 pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then I wrote for Angler and Hunter, which was a publication at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to know some of the people in the industry through a group called Outdoor Writers of Canada. I would go to their the conferences, and so I met Bert Myers and all these people in the industry. And then at some point, I ended up writing for Ontario Outdoors, and this is quite a while ago now, like in the early 90s. And that's been my primary magazine gig ever since. And I do freelance to other magazines, but in Canada, except for I do write for Quebec magazine. They translate my articles, Chasse Pêche. And I've done stuff for them for 20 years, which is really cool. I have a long-term relationship with that magazine, and they really like my stuff because it's mostly about brook trout. And brook trout in Quebec. Brook trout are the number one fish in Quebec, right?
Yeah.
They're the walleye of Quebec.
Yeah.
Everybody here fishes for walleye.
Yeah.
Quebec, brook trout.
Yeah.
That is Ontario's fish.
Yeah.
That's what...
So, there's been all sorts of, and the radio thing, because had a long radio career. It started about the same time I started the outdoor writing, because they brought me in to talk about the outdoors as a guest. And I remember at some point they were bringing me in constantly to talk about the outdoors. And I said to one of the producers, "Hey, can I get paid for this?" And they said, "As a matter of fact, you can get paid for it."
Nice.
And so I became a columnist, and then they actually started using me as a reporter, and I've hosted and
That's awesome.
Yeah.
done a whole bunch of stuff. But it's all, it all came out of that one thing. And my primary gig still is, even at CBC, my primary beat is outdoor stories. That's my strength. And and I dig up the Cougar stories and all that stuff. People love them. People love those stories. They're outdoor stories fascinate people, especially I think Canadians in particular, and Ontarians love good outdoor stories. They love a big fish story.
Yeah.
They love Cougar. They want to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, you do have a piece in this month's Ontario Outdoors about the cougar caught on the trail cam, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that
adds a whole new dynamic to camping in Ontario.
Yeah, it really is. And About I think it was in 2017 was actually the first cougar carcass was found in Ontario, and I got that story. I scooped that story. It was found just northwest of here, and it was an animal that had actually, they found out later it was stray probably from South Dakota. They do that by DNA, but it was in Ontario. It was in northwestern Ontario. And so we've had 2 sightings actually here in the last 2 months on trail cam around Thunder Bay.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool. And those are the stories. Cool. I mean, I get excited about those stories, doing them. So that's
for sure.
That's the journalism side of what I do. But
not to get, because it's obviously not the Cougar podcast, but just one last thing. Were Cougars? Yeah, it's a bit of a Cougar tangent right now.
Let's do it. A CT.
Were Cougars? Did they have a range in Ontario and then get hunted out, or is this new for Ontario?
So it seems like they probably have been here off and on. You know, like Ontario's wildlife has changed over time due to not only way more humans, but logging. You know, logging really changed things. Like, you know, a lot of people don't realize that moose weren't really very common in Ontario until the forestry started. They actually came up from Minnesota and populated Ontario and there was way more deer here back in the day, and caribou were the primary species, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there was probably some cougar around, just like, you know, back in the day there was elk in Ontario, and there's elk now because they've been reintroduced primarily, but you know, things change over time, right? Depending on the habitat. And so I think there's probably always been some cougar around, but you know, I swear I'm the only person in Northwestern Ontario who hasn't seen a cougar, and I'm outside a lot. So, you know, even though I've been reporting on all these stories for years and years, you start thinking, but then there's been, like, you know, when they're live on a trail cam on Highway 61, you know, 10 minutes west of Thunder Bay.
What can you say?
That's pretty solid evidence, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Seriously.
I remember years and years ago fishing a creek in eastern Ontario here, and for brook trout, and like I was like a teenager, and I'd heard rumors, like really, you know, just mumblings of like the MNR releasing a couple cougars to keep some rabbit or some populations down. I was like in the woods, like terrified, like constantly looking over my shoulder. I was like, I can't do this. I gotta get out of here, because I'm a tasty snack for a cougar.
The MNR releasing the cougar story is one that's been around for a long time.
And is it true, or is it?
I don't believe it's true. I actually remember hearing some of the guys saying they were airdropping them. You know, like it was like,
what?
Can you imagine seeing that?
Parachutes or whatever. And
parachuting.
I don't think really there's a big budget in the MNR for airdropping cougar onto the landscape. That seems unlikely.
But
Operation Dumbo Drop, the sequel, is just filmed in Ontario, dropping cougars into the wild.
As super cool as that would be, if that was true, I don't think it is.
Yeah. That is interesting to note about moose. Obviously, you know, I'm 34, and growing up, it was like moose was always just like part of the deal, you know.
Yes.
But that's interesting, and caribou wasn't. You know, so it's like it's really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it wasn't until I went, you know, to Esnagami Lodge, for example, in Northern Ontario, where we heard caribou are spotted sometimes. It's like, really? Wow, okay. Like, wow, that's pretty wild, you know?
And I've been to Esnagami. I was there actually, it's a long time ago. I went with my dad.
Nice.
And we went down the river, and
right on.
we actually found at least one spring hole that trip, which was pretty cool. I think my dad found it. He was like going to have a little like swim in the river or something, and he found a cold spot, and there was a bunch of brook trout there. But what a beautiful spot that is!
Oh my God, I know.
Crazy.
It's heavenly there.
If anybody's listened to the podcast with Eric Lund, who owns Esnagami, he talks about those spring holes, and that's when he like kind of had the. He knew it was beautiful, and he knew that there was brook trout, but when he found a spring hole with like 50 brook trout in it, he was like, oh my God.
It's a little crazy.
Special here.
we actually went down the river with Eric, which was super cool.
Oh, nice.
And this is a long time ago, but I think he's the kind of guy, he's probably just as enthusiastic now about it.
Isn't he ever?
Yeah. It's like the first time he's ever, like every day we went out with him, it was like the first time this guy had ever gone fishing, which obviously isn't true, but like he just has that kind of excitement.
Yeah, I know, he's that kind of guy. So anyway, so it's a very cool place.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. So going back to just leave the cougar talk and go back to brook trout for a sec. You were saying, like growing up in Thunder Bay, you're just like casually fishing brook trout and stuff like that. And Thunder Bay's got amazing fishing opportunities. And we all, know Thunder Bay's got, of course, like you say, giant brookies, pikes, all those fish. But they're also like, I think they have like the kind of profile of just being huge fish, right? Like just being big, wild fish for the most part. Is that kind of true? Like around that region, is it just like the fish are just hardier?
It's an interesting thing. I mean, we have a really harsh climate here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's minus 35 out, or whatever. It's cold. Like, so we have a steelhead population that's naturalized on Lake Superior. They were stocked, I think, in the early 1900s from West Coast, fish. Mm-hmm. They've naturalized in Lake Superior. Lake Superior is a harsh environment. It's harsher than Alaska. I mean, Alaska's warmer on the coast than it is Thunder Bay. Like, I think probably rainbow trout here are right at the very edge of what they can handle, and yet they thrive here, and they're tough fish. I mean, I love open water fishing as much as I do ice fish, but as soon as there's open water, I'm on it. So I'll be like shore casting on Superior when there's ice flows going by. Cool. And catching steelhead,
cool. Just in open water.
Yeah, like there's chunks of ice floating around in it, and these steelhead are smacking, like they're just incredible. And we do get pretty good ones. I got about a decade ago, I got a 33-inch steelhead shore casting on Superior. It was a tank, and I didn't even realize how big it was. I brought it up ashore, and again, I was with my dad, and he said, "How big is that thing?" And I said, "I don't know. It looks pretty big." And I got the tape out. It's 33 inches. I don't know what it weighed. I released it. Yeah. Big male. Mm-hmm. And so like that fish is probably really old too. Yeah. I wouldn't know how old, but it'd be probably 7, 8, 9 years old.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So we get pretty good sized steelhead here. We have big walleye, like huge walleye. I mean, my biggest one is 34 inches, caught in a lake that's
it's a nice fish.
Maybe an hour and a half from Thunder Bay. It's an inland lake. It's not Bay of Quinte. It's an inland lake, and this thing is 34 inches. Well, that's a giant walleye. Yeah. And huge brook trout in the Nipigon system. Genetically, I think they're just big. But then you have everything for brook trout. You got the cold water. Mm-hmm. You have tons of food. You have lots of elbow room. It's a big river. Lake Nipigon's huge, and then get into Superior. It's just got everything they need, so they just grow big, Right.
Yeah, we saw some strains of Nipigon brookies when we were up north one time at one of the hatcheries.
Right.
And we were just like, whoa, like it's just like a different kind of brook trout, They're just beefy. They're just tough. Yeah,
once
fish.
They get to a certain size, they just look like something else. Yeah. And I grew up catching small ones. I mean, the ones I was getting McVicker Creek and Current River around here. I can remember coming home on my bike, I'd caught a 13-inch brook trout in McVicker Creek. And to me, that was like old man in the sea material, Like, I came home, it was on a stick, and I showed my dad, and I just remember how excited I was. 13-inch brook trout. Like, giant, right? Yeah. So I grew up catching those, and they're beautiful. But you get on the Nipigon system, like you rarely catch 13-incher. It's the ones you catch generally start at about 18 inches and work their way up.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not that they're not there, but
sure. Yeah.
They're hiding. Like they're food.
Yeah, exactly. Low on the chain. Yeah.
The little ones are food, so you don't see them.
Yeah. Maybe we start with Superior, because I'd love to know, like I said, we have never fished. I mean, I don't know if you guys. I have never fished Superior. We've never fished it together, but we've been hearing a lot about it. Over the last few years. What are the fishing opportunities like on Superior? Like, what is it sort of like? Do we have to have a boat? I know you said you were fishing from shore. Like, is there good fly fishing ops? What are kind of what's the whole Superior experience?
Well, Superior is huge, obviously. I mean, this goes without saying. Yes, and it really, really is. And I mean, we live here in Northwestern Ontario. We live on the most the wildest part of Superior.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go across the border in Minnesota west of here, the entire shoreline of Superior is built up right down the coast. Like there's houses and
Wow.
hotels and
Jeez.
obviously Thunder Bay is on Lake Superior, and then there are quite a few. Like my parents live on Lake Superior down the shore, so there are quite a few homes and cottages. But there's huge swaths that are absolutely wild. I mean, really pretty unchanged from before Europeans set foot. So you have a really unusual and cool fishing experience when you're out there. I mean, it's there's not a lot of people around. Access isn't great on a lot of the spots. There's a couple parks that are on the lake that are really remote. Pakasaw Park's one of them. It's a wild fishery. The lake itself has pretty much everything. So the primary native species are lake trout, brook trout, whitefish. Those would be probably the three natives. Char or salmonids. Then you have walleye, perch, pike. In some of the bays, there's bass.
Okay.
Any interesting tributaries on Superior?
There's tons of tributaries. I mean, the coastal opportunities, the rivers, and they vary widely. Like there's a lot of trout water, freestone water that are, incredible steelhead rivers and brook trout come up them in the spring. And we have salmon too, by the way. We have Chinook salmon, we have coho salmon and pink salmon. And those are obviously all introduced from the West Coast. And rainbows, steelhead introduced from the West Coast. They're all naturalized. They're all
awesome.
Thriving,
spawning. Native. They're wild fish. You're catching a Chinook up here. 99% of the time, it's a wild fish. There is one hatchery that puts some fish out. I've never caught a hatchery Chinook myself. They've all been wild fish.
Yeah.
And so
that's really interesting that they've So that's an interesting point to touch on. That those populations have naturalized. I mean, you're describing fishing on ice floes for steelhead. Kind of sounds like you're fishing for char and Nunavut.
Yeah.
That sound pretty extreme. Do
you
find that? So there's no more steelhead stocking, so it's all naturalized. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there hasn't been steelhead stocking here in years and years. Now the funny thing about Superior, I'm talking about, there's no stocking here, but of course, across the pond there's Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and they stock some funky stuff. Like they actually stock splake in Lake Superior. They stock brown trout, and so we get those sometimes. Like every once in a while, I'll be fishing for coaster brook trout, and I'll hook this fish, and I'll come in, I'll look at it, and that's weird. And it's a splake.
Yeah. That's so weird.
It was a splake probably stocked in Michigan. Strayed.
Wow.
100 miles or whatever and come up the coast.
That's ballsy flake.
Or across the lake. And every once in a while somebody catches a brown trout here.
Oh, wow.
And, there's not a lot of them, but somebody say, I was, out down rigging in Little Trout Bay and I got a brown. So the odds are that brown comes from, Wisconsin or wherever. And there, there's just straying that goes on too. And also Minnesota used to stock what they called loopers, which were a strain of domestic rainbow called Kamloops that come from Kamloops, British Columbia.
Okay.
Are very hatchery friendly fish. They would stock them basically almost as a put and take in Minnesota. And we would catch them. We'd catch loopers. And you could almost always tell that it was a looper because it had a clipped fin. And also it was tended to be early in the season, and they'd be really kind of fat and dark. So they were straying from Minnesota up onto our rivers.
Wow. Jeez.
So it's a really diverse fishery, and depending on where you are in the lake, there's phenomenal fishing. There's some incredible warm water fishing in some of the bays. There's a bay called Black Bay, which is just east of Thunder Bay. It's a huge bay. It's quite unlike most of Lake Superior in that it's relatively shallow, and it has an incredible warm water fishery. It's different. It's like Lake Erie or something. It's got tons of walleye, perch, huge pike, and bass. lots and lots of smallmouth bass. So you can go there and just it's just such a different fishery than the next bay over, which is Nipigon Bay, where you're into trout and salmon and brook trout, and there are some walleye and there are some pike and stuff, but it's quite a different fishery. And this is all on Lake Superior's shore. It's
depending on
like warm water is kind of the outlier then.
Warm water's the outlier, and it
That's
creates
cool.
just it's a really cool thing. And it's really exploded. The Black Bay fisheries really exploded because it was heavily commercially fished for years and years and years, and that stopped about 15 years ago for different reasons. And the bay is just booming, like it's just booming with fish, and the pike fishing is off the charts, like giant pike.
Yeah.
So some of the, and I mean, I've fly fished quite a few places. I've been the Casaba Lake, up in the Territories. I've been to northern Manitoba. I've been to northern Saskatchewan, fishing for pike, fly fishing for pike. I've never seen better than 40 minutes from my door.
Oh, geez.
Honestly.
Nice. All right, awesome. So see you this summer.
Yeah.
Ice fishing side tangent. Is that kind of like, do you spend a lot of ice fishing time like on Superior, just fishing the different?
Yeah, so I do. Ice fishing. Well, it's easy because it's right at our doorstep.
Yeah.
And there's quite a good fishery on Lake Superior. There's tons of lake trout.
Yeah.
There's whitefish. Herring are actually become quite a popular fishery. On Black Bay, there's a big perch fishery that's developed that 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, barely existed because there wasn't very many perch. Now there's 2 outfitters that run off of Black Bay for winter perch. And it's quite good perch fishing. It's pretty cool. But yeah, and you can get steelhead through the ice. So I do a bit of it.
Steelhead through the ice.
Yeah, steelhead through the ice it's a trip. It's a trip. They're hard fighters, and I mean they just come in like a freight train.
Yeah,
yeah, I bet.
So I'll ice fish Superior. I grew up ice fishing a ton on Superior. Like I've caught hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of lake trout over the years. I don't do as much ice fishing as I used to. I'm wimpier now than I used to be. Like I used to go at -30 and all that.
Yeah.
I have less of a stomach for that now for some reason. And there was lots of adventures tied in with that too. Snow machines that wouldn't run, machinery that wouldn't start, getting stuck in the slush, trucks that wouldn't start.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
I still do it, but it's
less of an appetite to try and fix.
I have
your car
enough.
in the middle
I have
of
enough
Superior.
adventure stories for a lifetime. So
yeah, probably.
Yeah. So now it's just more about getting out and enjoying it.
I still do love getting out, and you can only be inside so long. Like you need vitamin D in your eyes. You need some fresh air.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's for
yeah.
sure.
Especially these days, it's like.
Especially these days, it's been a little. Obviously, everybody's experiencing. It's been even weirder, because we're in lockdown here in Thunder Bay right now.
Right.
And we're going to come out of it this Tuesday, I believe, but to the red zone, but limited human interaction, and
right.
Yeah. What are cases like in Thunder Bay? Like, is it kind of high right now?
It's spiked. Yeah, it's spiked actually. It's a little higher than it should be for sure. We had outbreak in the jail and long-term care homes. So yeah, we're not out of the woods by any stretch.
I know we're in downtown Toronto. I'm like looking at the grass. I'm like, this is it for the rest of the year, man. We're not going anywhere. Cases aren't exactly low here.
Yeah, no, I've heard that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Anyway.
So the one good thing is the outdoors has been I can remember in the spring when COVID first hit, the first time I went fishing, I just went by myself and it just felt so good. I've been inside for like 3 weeks straight or 4 weeks straight, and just it just helped me so much. Mentally helped me so much to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember my first.
No, you go.
Yeah, no, I actually was with Aldo, and calling in and letting my boss know, listen, I got to go out to the river, and that was and just going out and being there during this time was just so good. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, trout trout opener was definitely a big mental
Yeah.
health
Yeah, savor.
Yeah.
mental health saver.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, the first time we ever, I hung out with anybody last year was at Esnagami.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. Wow.
I think so. I mean, aside from on the river, that was
Yeah.
the first time I actually interacted with
Yeah.
humans, which was June.
Yeah, same.
We're recording this right now. Valentine's Day, actually. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Right,
Valentine's
yeah,
Day.
exactly. I washed the dishes for my wife this morning. She was very excited.
There
Nice.
you go.
I did the same last night.
Yeah, I don't have anybody.
So you didn't have to wash the dishes then.
Exactly. See, that's a positive spin.
It's a positive spin. But yeah, it's February 14th. Definitely looking
It
forward
is.
to Esnagami.
Mm.
Superior is just so foreign to me and foreign to us. In terms of where in relation to Thunder Bay is Nipigon, because obviously we've done a show about Nipigon. We had two of our good friends, Matt and Nick, and they did the lake. They've primarily focused on the lake, so maybe we can chat
Right.
about the river.
Yeah.
Anything I've ever seen, let's say the New Fly Fisher or in Ontario Out of Doors magazine, that river seems
Mhm.
daunting to me. Obviously you need a boat. But yeah, maybe you can start with where is the Nipigon and what how does it flow into Superior and what's going on in the Nipigon River
Okay,
specifically.
So I'll give you the thumbnail sketch.
Okay.
So the Nipigon River is about 120 clicks east of Thunder Bay on Highway
Okay.
1117.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so Highway 1117 is the only artery that goes down the shore. There's no north route, and it goes across the Nipigon River Bridge. So all the traffic in Canada has to go across the Nipigon River Bridge.
Right.
So if the Nipigon River Bridge goes out, everything stops. And a few years ago when they were working on it, there was a problem, and it did stop for a day or something, and trucks were backed up for miles. But
man.
anyway, so Lake Nipigon is this huge lake. It's about I'm going to say 70 miles high by about 40 miles wide. I don't know what that is in kilometers. It's like 120 kilometers high or something.
Big.
It's a huge lake. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of islands in it. Maximum depth, I think, is 540 feet.
Man.
Very little human habitation on it. There's a couple small communities that are really small. There's not a lot of access, limited cottages.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at how big that lake is and the number of cottages on it, there's dozens.
Right.
And it's this monster lake.
Mhm.
Most of it is now a provincial reserve around it. So there's a green strip around the lake, so it won't be developed.
That's good.
Just to give you an idea how cold it is there, there's 60 frost-free days on Lake Nipigon.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
What?
it's sort of permanently cold.
Okay.
Wow.
It's an incredibly
Cold.
pristine, cold lake. It's relatively sterile, although there's a lot of there's actually smelt in it that were introduced,
Oh no way.
and herring, and there's food there, but as compared to a lot of other places, it's a pretty sterile environment.
That's great.
It's a phenomenal
Yeah.
place. It's a magical place, and
Clean and pristine.
people do fall in. It is clean and pristine, and it has the world's greatest brook trout fishery. It has unbelievable lake trout fishing, giant lake trout, incredible pike fishing. You can go to one bay on Lake Nipigon and potentially catch 3 personal bests in one day
Wow.
within
Mhm.
a few hundred meters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite seriously. Almost everybody I guide gets their personal best of at least brook trout and pike.
Yeah.
How
does
It's
Nipigon
an-
Bay on Superior contrast with or compare to Lake Nipigon?
So
Is that
I'll
that's where the mouth
so,
is?
Yeah.
So I'll link. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll link it together. So you have Lake Nipigon, and then
Yep.
the river comes out of Lake Nipigon, and the Nipigon River is the largest tributary to Lake Superior. So
Oh.
all those rivers all around Lake Superior, and there's some huge ones like the Pick River and Mishpicotton. Nipigon is the biggest. It is a huge river. and it is daunting. Like that, it is daunting. I mean, it took me years to even feel comfortable fishing there. And I mean, I've been
Really?
fishing it for ages. It is, and in the last few years, it's been as high as I've ever seen it, which is, it's like an ocean almost. And then, so all that water goes into Nipigon Bay, and then Nipigon Bay is this humongous bay that stretches quite a ways out. It's hard to describe unless you look at a map, but it's a giant bay.
Yeah,
it's got these really large islands in it that the islands have multiple lakes on them that you can fish in theoretically, and I have.
That's cool.
Like it's just
It almost
humongous
reminds me
water.
of like Bay of Quinte or something like that.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge water. I just and it can get really rough, and Lake Nipigon can get really rough. That's the other thing about these big bodies of water. They can be unpleasant in the wind. You have to be ready for. I have a great respect for these waters. I'm very careful on them because I've had some,
kind of scary situations.
Seeing the face of God experiences a few times, and you have to be really, really careful. That being said, it's worth the effort in my estimation. And the other thing is too, it's hard, like the Nipigon River is a little tricky for somebody who just like backs their boat in and says, let's go fishing for a number of reasons. There's rapids in the river. There are, trees and rocks and stuff, and a lot of current. It's, it's not easy fishing. And the other thing is, like, we haven't talked about fly fishing yet. This is not easy fly fishing. Like, it's not spring, it's not mill stream fly fishing. You're fishing heavy gear. It's a lot of sinking lines, generally a lot of chuck and duck.
Deep
but that's
water.
just the nature of the beast.
Right.
Like it's just big, heavy water, big fish, and you're using big gear.
Did you get a steelhead run up the Nipigon as well?
Yeah, so there is a steelhead run. It's not a huge run for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. There are steelhead there. It used to be bigger. There are some things that have happened in Superior in the last few years, largely because this one bay called Black Bay, which I've already mentioned, has boomed and come back so much. It seems like there's been some impact on some of the cold water fish, especially steelhead, because of the amount of walleye and perch and pike, and it's had some detrimental effect to steelhead. That being said, you can catch steelhead in the Nipigon River for sure. You can catch everything. You can catch salmon year-round in the Nipigon River. It's the weirdest thing, and they're spawning. Like, you'll catch salmon in April that are dropping eggs, which I don't understand. And you'll get silverfish. Get them all summer. I catch them in July. The biggest run is in the fall, but there's always salmon in the Nipigon River. There's pike in the Nipigon River. There's walleye. The walleye fishery is closed on Nipigon Bay and in the Nipigon River, but there's quite a few of them there. They've been coming back. It was at one time a huge fishery, but again, commercial fishing and other things knocked them down. They're rehabilitating walleye, and they're native there. They're native walleye, but some huge ones, absolutely huge ones.
Seems like all that's missing is grayling.
Yeah. Pretty much. It's quite a fishery. Lake trout come up the Nipigon River out of Lake Superior in the springtime. I mean, I've caught like 38-inch lake trout in the river.
Jeez. Is that where the guiding culture kind of, a lot of guides on Nipigon, or like if you go to let's say if one of our listeners wants to go fish Thunder Bay and catch massive brook trout, are we going to the Nipigon or where are the
probably guides? And there aren't a lot of guides. There are some guides, but because the Nipigon requires a boat and things like that, it's a little bit different than say you're guiding on the Grand River or something. It's not really a wading fishery. So like I run 2 boats in the summer and they're big, because it's big water.
Yeah, because you're guiding as well.
Yeah, I guide in the summer. I've guided. This will be my 8th year. I never guided until 2013. I never had any interest in it. I didn't want to do it. And then a guy named Ray Rivard, who owns Quebec Lodge, which is located close to Nipigon. It's in a community called Red Rock, which is not far from Nipigon. It's a really cool old lodge built in the 30s.
Yeah.
He'd bugged me for a couple of years. He'd see me at outdoor shows and say, hey, you should guide and whatever. I go, no, I don't want to guide.
Yeah.
And so finally, like, Ray's a really persistent guy, and he said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, try it, and if you don't like it, I won't bug you anymore, or something, words to that effect. And that sounded like a good deal to me.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and I liked it. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
it's rewarding.
Here I am,
it's definitely rewarding.
I find it very rewarding. And you know what I find the most about it is seeing somebody catch their first giant brook trout and reliving that experience of just like having an out of body experience when you've caught a 25-inch brook trout. And I get to see that almost every week,
Every time you catch a brook trout, does it feel like your first time catching a brook trout? Because that's how I feel.
Well, some of the people fish with me will say yes, because I do get very excited still, and I love it. But I get more excited seeing somebody else catch a big one and seeing them excited and watching them let it go, because it's a catch and release fishery.
Right.
You are allowed to keep 1/22, but I don't allow any kill. And most of the guides don't, and actually most of the anglers don't really, and that's made a huge difference on the system.
Yeah.
Like it's just changed the system. When I started fishing the Nipigon, it was a 5-fish limit, and there was no brook trout. Like, it was terrible.
Really?
It was a terrible fishery, and sometimes I have to remind people
so
to come up
interesting
there.
to hear.
Yeah. There's a long story, which I won't go into entirely, but basically it was a long-term rehabilitation from the 80s until about the 90s, where a whole bunch of changes happened. There was a change to the regulation, slowly lowering the regulation, and then finally coming on to there was a committee that was formed. I was on it, but a bunch of other people were on it too, where it became a 1-fish limit, and that fish had to be over 22 inches. And the reason was because a 22-inch brook trout has spawned 3 times. So theoretically, if you want to harvest a brook trout, that fish has already spawned 3 times. So you've got 3 spawns out of it.
Right.
In my estimation, I still want them to spawn 2 more times or whatever.
Of course.
And it's such a rare thing. Like, there's just nowhere else you can go and do what we do at the Nipigon so accessibly anywhere. I mean, and I fish for brook trout all over. There's nowhere else where I put an 18-foot boat in and catch 20-inch plus brook trout every day.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
It's
so
incredible.
It's
incredible.
So you started fishing it in the 80s.
Early 80s.
Early 80s. You started fishing in the 80s. It's a terrible fishery.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Some regulations go in. You could say now it's pretty much catch and release. Pretty much.
Yeah. So I'm going to shout out. I'll shout out a couple people who made a huge difference. One is a guy named Rob Swainson, who's now retired. He worked for M&R. He actually came from Southern Ontario. He had grown up fishing the Algonquin area. Became a biologist, came to Nipigon, and was shocked at how terrible the Nipigon system was being managed.
Oh, okay.
And also how terrible the brook trout fishing was. Like there's 3 hydro dams on the Nipigon River. And those hydro dams had full control over the system and could do whatever they wanted. And it was fluctuating the river, like it'd be 6-8 feet a day, and it was erosion. And what was happening, the worst thing that was happening, is that they were dropping the water super low after the brook trout spawn and killing all.
Oh my God!
Not just the brook trout, but everything. Like the spawn was high and dry in Lake Nipigon too. So Rob, with help of other people, but mostly Rob spearheaded it, went to Hydro and said, "Look, we got to fix this. This can't happen." And so that there's been a
wow. That's a lot of
agreement with Hydro that's been in place for quite a while now. That's made an incredible difference. And then the change in the regs was huge, and moved towards a catch and release mentality, where people appreciate it. This is such a unique fishery, and it's really made a huge difference. Yeah, it's a super success story. It really is, and it's spread so that success story in the Nipigon River has spread throughout, has meant that coasters have boomed throughout the North Shore Lake Superior, because the reg's all the same for the whole coast. It's a 1/2.
Okay, cool, great.
So it was a meat fishery. Like when I was a young man, I can remember people that was derbies, and people would like empty coolers of brook trout out.
Holy shit.
I'm not joking. Like I
know you're
remember,
not.
just like pour them out, and I just like I was stunned. I'd never seen such big brook trout, and then those days are gone. Like
That's good.
so.
That's a great story to hear. You don't always hear stories like that. in
No,
Ontario.
it's
nice
really
to hear.
it's a tremendous story, and and the fishing's just getting better.
Yeah,
it
that's
really
great.
is.
That's awesome.
It's still improving.
Maybe hard to target, but when did you notice, was there a season where you're like, wow, it's better? Was it like year 2000 or something? You're like, okay, we're starting to see some returns here.
Because brook trout are fairly short-lived, like a brook trout generally only lives 6-7 years, so they can turn over pretty quick. I can remember it improving. I started fishing in the early 80s. Even in the early 90s, it was starting to get better. But I really saw a huge difference probably about 10 years ago, when all of a sudden it's just like the average size was just like we were catching so many fish that were unusually large. And then 3 years ago, I saw the next step where I'd never caught a brook trout over 25 inches or seen anybody else catch one. And I put 3 fish over 25 inches in my boat in 1 year, which was just catching 3 unicorns, for me anyway. And that to me was a sign that, okay, well, we've gone over to the next level of, we're getting really old fish now that are, 7, 8, maybe even 9 years old. That are these giants. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see that paying off, and then people can actually see, reap the rewards and see it's working and all that stuff. Yeah, we gotta go fish out. We gotta go fish out that way for sure. It's really nice to hear about, all the opportunities out there.
Yeah, it's cool because the first time we had a show about the Nipigon, it was about the lake and about pike mainly, and so we obviously have heard the stories of the famed brook trout, so it's cool to put a little bit of context and history behind that fishery, and it's a success story, which of course is always inspiring, especially because brook trout are so special to, I'd hope, I know they're special to people in Quebec, they're definitely special to us. They are, one of our native trout. So,
Well, and I'm sure you know this, but the world record was caught in the Nipigon River, the world record brook trout.
Yep.
In 1915, a doctor named Dr. Cook caught it. He was from what was then Fort William, which is now Thunder Bay. Port Arthur and Fort William became Thunder Bay. Okay. And and that is one of the oldest standing records. Like, I mean, it's over, I think it's 106 years old now, that record.
Yeah. How big was the fish?
It was 14 and a half pounds.
Pretty big. It's pretty big.
It was, I'm going by memory here. I think it was 31 and a half inches long.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was a huge, and even then it was considered unusually large, and it was sent away to Ottawa, and an ichthyologist identified it as a brook trout, because even in 1915, people went, what the heck? Like,
this isn't a brook trout.
That cannot be a brook trout. It's too big. Yeah. And it was. Yeah. It was a brook trout. Like, since then, people said, oh, it was a splake or whatever. Well, no, it was identified by a scientist in 1915 as a brook trout. So you can't change history, folks.
Yeah, can't change it. I love that. Probably put the fish on a train, sent it to Ottawa.
Oh, yeah. No, it was
the Prime Minister's overseeing the whole thing.
Like, there's actually a newspaper clipping, from back then, with a picture of the fish. It was a big deal.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, the tie downs over it and the tarp calm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, in those days, like how they fished the river, there was no dams. It was just a wild river. It was just white water. So they would do these like canoe trips where you would train up to Lake Nipigon, take a steam train up to Lake Nipigon, and then you go down the river. You'd have 2 native guides in a canoe, and the angler would be in the middle. Yeah. And they would, canoe or portage down back to Nipigon. So that fish probably, before it was weighed, it probably been out of the water for a couple of days.
Fishing back then must have been so wild, eh? Like that.
Well, it was a different thing, right? It was, it was a big adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, big adventure.
The pictures there's actually video, because the last dam didn't go in until 1956. So there's actually quite a bit of film of the old river. If you go on YouTube and just type in like Nipigon, historic Nipigon River, you can see it. It's there.
Oh, great.
It's just incredible to see what that river looks like. There's not a lot of whitewater on it now. There's some, but it was a wild, wild river.
Jeez.
Very cool.
Okay, Gord, we do this segment in the show called
Whoa.
Mitchie's Fishies 5 every single episode, and it's the same 5 questions we ask every guest, and they're kind of just like favorite or best, or that kind of stuff. What's your favorite this? What's your best that? But there's 5 of them, and so we're gonna ask you them now. They're all about fly fishing. But the first one is, what is your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick a favorite fish, what would it be?
Well, as we just talked about, I'm a brook trout guy. That's not a shock, and and it's not because they're the best fighters, because they can fight really well, but they're no steelhead, they're no chinook. It's just the pristine places that they live.
Yes.
And also they're all different. Like that's the other thing about brook trout. Like they're like snowflakes. They're all different.
Yeah.
Like you can catch one that's round and very colorful like a clown, and the next one will be long and skinny and silvery, and they're the same species. I just find that fascinating that they're all so different. So I'm a brook trout guy.
I love it.
Right on.
I thought you were going to surprise us with like a gar or something like that. I was like, oh, we've just been talking about brook trout for an hour.
Burbot.
I like gar. Burbot.
Yeah.
I'm a big burbot fan, What can I say?
No, I'm pretty boring.
I love that.
Brook trout is not a boring fish,
100%.
that's for sure.
No, it's
Awesome.
not. No, a lot of people get very fired up about brook trout.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Number 2 of Mitch's Fishies 5 is, if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why? Assuming it's the best time of year to go to that place. It's the best time of the season.
Assuming there is
Okay,
no
well,
COVID.
I'm going to
No COVID.
exclude my home waters because that's an easy answer. I've been to BC quite a few times over my life, and Langara Island up on the north point of the Queen Charlotte is one of the most magical places I've ever been to. I would love to go back there. I haven't been there in about a decade, and I miss it. It is just phenomenal. Or at least last time I was there, it was phenomenal. I mean, coho fishing, the Chinook fishing, the whales and the dolphins and the
cool.
air, and there's just something really wild and magical about it. And I would love to get back there before I kick the bucket. See what happens.
Yeah. Any plans to go out there maybe in the next few years?
You know what? I haven't made any plans. Like one of the problems with guiding is I used to travel a lot, and guiding really, once you get into the guiding game, you don't really travel anymore because your summer is spent guiding. But I have a son who's talking about moving out to BC, so that may be
Hey, there you go.
that may be the open door to
Good idea, son.
getting. I'm not fighting him on it. There's lots
What about this? Moving to this part of BC?
No, BC's a beautiful province, and there's just so much cool fishing there. There's really.
Oh man,
So I'm gonna say Langara Island.
love it.
Love it.
Okay, number 3 is, what is your best or one of your favorite fishing memories from over the years? One of your favorite memories.
Oh.
It's always a tough one because there's so many.
Or just the first one that pops into your head.
Okay, so I'll go back to brook trout. The first time I ever caught a giant brook trout was in 1989. I'd been fishing the Nipigon for about 6 years, and I was on Lake Nipigon, and we found this area on the lake, on the lower part of the lake, that had big fish. And we'd spent days trying to find any brook trout on Lake Nipigon. It's not always easy. And back then there wasn't as many fish. Anyway, I ended up hooking this fish. And I'll never forget it. I cut it on a mouse pattern, except I cut it down to look like a muddler. But it was huge.
Okay.
And it had like a shark hook on it. It was just a gigantic fly.
Yeah.
Fishing that fly, and I remember that brook trout coming up and eating it. And I knew that was the biggest brook trout I'd ever caught. And fighting it and being so excited, and my partner landed it, and we went to shore and took some pictures of it, and then I let it go. And it was like I was on heroin for 2 days after that. I was so high from excitement.
Yeah.
And I really was. Like, I was phoning my friends, like it was going to people's houses and telling them about it. It was just crazy. It's like a religious experience. And that was a 25-inch brook trout. It was, it was just, it was the culmination of my childhood dreams, and so that's always stuck with me.
And it was on top water, you said.
Or like submerged?
Well, it was a little under the water, but it was a huge fly. Like, I mean, I look back and I actually still have the fly, and it's very crude. I'm sure I bought it, like a Canadian Tire or something, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
But it worked. And I still use those big furry patterns. I mean, still work great on the Nipigon because there's lots of sculpin and lots of big and furry and long works. So.
Yep. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, good story.
Awesome. Number 4 is, why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing? Why do you keep going out fishing?
Fly fishing, I fish in all ways. I do everything. But fly fishing to me is the purest form of angling. Just the, and it's not always graceful, as we all know. It's not always river runs through it. It's a lot of times, you're wrapping fly line around your head and
or each other's heads.
Lots, or hooking yourself in the back of the head. But there's just something about it that is more memorable when I catch a fish on a fly than in any other way. Like if I catch a steelhead on a fly, for whatever reason, it always feels more memorable. And just, I don't even know why. And I've been fly fishing my whole life. I've been fly fishing since I was 10 years old.
Yeah. I
had a old Fenwick fiberglass rod and a Martin reel, and thing, the reel weighed about 14 pounds. It was thing was all out, it was horrible, but that's what I used. And then I think I got my grandfather had one of those, they were like, I don't even know what they were. It was almost like a spring coiled fly reel that would suck the fly line in when you lifted it. It was like a trigger.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but I had that for a while.
They were called, I'll get the name.
Yeah,
like automatic fly reels.
Yeah, automatic fly reel. I had one of those for a while too. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all the same. Like you're just throwing your line out with a fly, and then seeing. The other thing is I don't do a ton of dry fishing just because there's not a lot on the Nipigon. There is some, but there's something about also a big fish taking a dry fly that's so exciting, And the one time I did get a big brookie on a dry, I'd seen it boiling. It was in the river, and I was I had a 7-weight sage, and I was throwing this big stimulator, and I couldn't quite reach it. And I was just trying to get, it was right up to the top of the waders, and I finally got the fly out, and it just went down. I just saw this brook trout literally jump out of the water onto the fly, and it was a huge brook trout, and I'll never forget that. It was just like the most exciting thing. It's just just something about fly fishing that is just a little more exquisite somehow.
Yeah. Totally.
I think they are just called automatic fly reels. Sorry, go back to that.
Yeah,
I think they are too.
They had a handle on them.
Yeah.
You squeeze the handle. And
squeeze it, and all. It'd be like when you press the thing on your vacuum and the cord goes in. It was the same basic idea, right?
Exactly.
Worked
at a few.
Max Catch automatic fly reel.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think Fluger made one.
Yeah,
people had. Yeah.
I think the one I had was like metallic green or something.
Yeah. Kind of a funny concept. It'd be hard to. I don't know. I feel like it would be hard to.
I'm not sure why they. It's kind of a weird thing when you look back at that, but that's what I used for a while. That was my next step, and
it's a funny concept.
Okay, number 5, the Mitch's Fishies 5 is, what fly pattern represents you best and why? If you were a fly, what would you be? It could be an existing pattern.
I really want to say sex dungeon.
That one's taken.
Leaving it there.
Great fly.
Which is a fantastic fly on the Nipigon River.
I bet.
It really is in all its permutations. But probably a muddler. The muddler was developed on the Nipigon River. this is an interesting story. There was a guy named Don Gapin who had a lodge on the Nipigon River, and the lodge is still there, although now it's not being used as a lodge. But Don Gapin developed the Muddler Minnow on the banks of the Nipigon River in the 50s to represent a sculpin, because there's just scads of sculpin in the Nipigon River. And so all the muddlers and all the different designs came from that original Muddler Minnow from the Nipigon River. So I'm gonna go with the Muddler Minnow. That's probably.
I had no idea the Muddler came from that region. That's amazing.
Yeah, neither did I.
It's kind of a cool story. And for years, his son Dan Gapin, and I think they still do. There's Gapin's Tackle, sold Muddler minnows.
Wow.
And,
Jeez.
Yeah. So I'm a muddler guy. Although
love it.
Yeah. I mean, the flies I use are generally much larger than your typical muddler, and a lot of them are sort of muddler-esque, like Matuka sculpins and all that stuff. But I mean, the basic pattern is primarily what I use.
Yeah. It's funny, brook trout and muddlers. We take a trip down in Temagami in the Lady Evelyn River. Oh, yeah. We've got all of our fun, fancy new streamers and whatnot, and they're not really producing as much as we want to. And I'm just like looking at my box. I'm like, I don't know. Put on a Muddler Minnow and catch the biggest fish of the trip. And I'm like, oh, the Muddler again.
No, it's one of those flies that to go to, and I mean, sometimes it looks a little plain Jane compared to everything else, but sometimes plain Jane works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. But it's cool that there's a little bit of a Canadian history to the Muddler Minnow.
It's crazy.
Seeing as how much I use it for brook trout,
Well, and also from your region too. You can own that pattern, man. Like you are the
muddler. You are the muddler.
Yeah, it's northwestern Ontario is muddler country.
Love it.
I do like it. I'm gonna tell Gab that. I can't wait to tell Gab
That's
that.
a great bumper sticker.
Muddler country.
Muddler country.
Welcome to Muddler country.
Or just on the Thunder Bay sign,
I don't know if you know, but Gab was one of the former co-hosts. Thank you, Aldo, and he swears by the muddler. He loves brookies and swears by the muddler, and
he's from Quebec.
He's from Quebec.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like, and the circle goes in, around and around, right?
Yeah. That's great.
That's great. Okay.
Gord, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Honestly, it's been really fun chatting, and can't wait to go fishing. My God, I'm just sitting in my room now looking at the snow. Like,
I know.
Yeah, your wealth of knowledge is amazing, and I hope you guide us.
Well, it's my pleasure. I love talking about fishing, and have me back anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Thanks,
hey,
buddy.
Gord, this is like your shameless plug time. Where can people find your writing? Where can people find Ontario Out of Doors?
Hire you as a guide.
Anything.
Sure. Okay,
phone number.
So Ontario Out of Doors is, you can go to oodmag.com, I believe is the website. They're on Facebook and Instagram and all that. Great magazine, I was a reader long before I ever wrote for it. And I really do think like Ray and the folks there do a great job of covering a lot of different ground in the magazine. It's not just about one thing. It's covers, it's a hard thing to do, to cover all the interests, but Ontario Out of Doors does a good job of that. As far as guiding, I do most of my guiding out of Quebec Lodge. So you can go to NipigonRiverAdventures.com. People can contact me too. I'm on Instagram at Ellis Gord. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. So you can contact me and I can, hook you up. I do have a lot of people contact me through social media. My website is not up right now because we're supposed to be making a new one. So you'll just have to go through social media for now.
Cool.
Yeah, but I do guide. I'm going to be pretty big if the border opens, and that's the other big question right now. Is whether the border is going to open. It'll be a very busy year, but even so, I do guide a lot of Canadians. I have many of my repeat customers are Canadian anglers who come from Southern Ontario to go brook trout fishing and northern pike fishing, and some of them just want to go for brookies. Some want to mix it up. yeah, so I am available for hire as well. So
Awesome.
Right on.
We'll
Feel-
put links to
feel
that in the
free
show
to-
notes.
people can feel free to contact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll put
Awesome.
links to the show notes. And, I'm not knocking Labrador or anything, but, if you're living in Ontario, you don't have to leave the province to go after giant brook trout. Because you're in Muddler country, baby.
Muddler Country. Gord, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
man. It's
Thanks,
great
guys.
Thank you, Gord.
Great to meet you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Gordon.
Take
Take care.
That was an awesome show. Gord's such a cool guy. Man, I want to go fishing right now.
Yeah, I mean,
But I can't because it's locked out in winter. What are we going to do?
I think we definitely need to go to Thunder Bay, even if we can squeeze it in, even just for a weekend, because there are some pretty quick flights up to Thunder Bay. Again, of course, depending on the COVID situation, obviously. But coming from Toronto, like, you can fly Porter right to Thunder Bay, and then boom, you're in fucking brook trout country. How cool is that?
No.
Muddler
is cool.
Country.
Mother
No
country.
pun intended. It is cold.
That's cold, eh? Polar vortex up in
What's
this.
the pun?
I don't
What's
know.
the pun?
Because he said it's cool up there, and I'm like, yeah, it is cool. Oh, the operative word, I should say.
Oh.
What?
If you haven't heard it yet from us, we were in Ontario Out of Doors magazine.
Yeah.
Keep talking about it.
I know.
But it's because we're so excited. All those on the friggin' cover. And then we've got a story in there about Esnagami Lodge.
Oh man, but don't
Um,
forget Yilma's also
Yilma's a double
the
spread.
centerfold.
He's the centerfold, which is like not the first time, Yilma. We're super excited to be in the magazine. So pick it up. Pick up the digital copy if you want on the site. We'll put the link in the show notes. I'll just Google Ontario Out of Doors and you'll find their website. Or pick up the actual physical copy in wherever
Yeah,
you find magazines.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the digital copy's cool and I love all that stuff, but I mean, growing up reading magazines and fishing magazines, to see us and our work in one is, I don't know, it's really cool. It's really cool to me.
Well, especially like our home magazine, and I've been reading Ontario Out of Doors since I was a kid, so it is super cool because it's I don't know, it's super exciting. It's really, really fun. Thank you, Ontario Out of Doors, for working with us. We're excited to be working with you guys, and can't wait to keep doing more stuff with you. Check out the magazine,
we've got
follow along.
We've got an article coming in a few months with about our good friends
Yes.
at Elk Lake Wilderness, so that'll be nice to get them a little feature. And obviously Gord's work is in here. He's got an article.
Gord's in there.
If you got the February issue, there's an article about the Cougars, the Cougar tangent. But he also has
Check
a
it
great 2-page article on sight fishing in streams, lakes, and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking was kind of interesting while we were talking, like,
What's that,
the-
baby?
the Great Lakes are such an interesting fishery. Like,
Yeah,
and I feel
crazy.
like not really like tapped into by fly anglers in the same kind of way that it's such a big body of water, and we have so many tools at our disposal in terms of like watercraft, like whether it be water masters, poling skiffs, or certain types of boats meant for
Kayaks.
fly fishing. Like, there's a lot to be discovered in the Great Lakes, and like, I think like growing like if I could ever, let's put it this way, if I win the lottery, I'm buying a poling skiff, and we're gonna use it in Lake Ontario.
It'd be sick. Well, it's kind of like, it's like fishing redfish in the flats of Gulf of Mexico. Like, you're on a huge body of water, but you stick to certain depths and stuff like that, and you can get into all kinds of fishing opportunities, right?
Like, he was talking about, like, what was it called,
Like, don't be scared of a big body of water.
Yeah, what was it called, like Black Bay or
Disrespect
whatever?
Black Bay, yeah.
Like shallow water fishing for giant pike and bass and Superior. I mean, Matt Martin stocking giant carp and grass flats in Georgian Bay. Like,
exactly.
Just here in town in Toronto, like, there's massive pike just at the harbor front. Like,
yeah, I mean, don't be scared to fish a big body of water. Obviously, do it in a way that makes sense. Like, you're not going to paddle a board out into the middle of Superior and just start casting, because you're not going to catch anything, and it's dangerous as hell. So, but like, there's probably tons of water around certain bays and things like that you can fish, and I'm sure people do. But fly fishing, you're right. Yeah, 100%.
I just think it's like this maybe a new frontier for us, or for the Ontario community, or any Great Lake community that, like,
The Great Lakes are wild when you think about it. Like, when you look on the map, it's like they're huge, and they're right around Ontario, like here, and people talk about like, oh, the West Coast and the East Coast, blah blah blah. It's like, man, we've got some big crazy fisheries around Ontario. You know, like
Yeah.
We've got some of the most unique
mhm.
lakes on Earth right
Oceans.
here.
They're like
Yeah.
oceans. Yeah.
And
literally. The Great Lakes. That's what
they're
they're called. They're Great Lakes.
yeah, you can see them from
They're great.
space.
It's in their name. Come on.
Yeah,
What
you
else
see
we
from
gotta
space.
do here?
Yeah. And also, like, I know there are guys in Michigan, like guides and fly shops that have purchased pulling skiffs, and they do they go after carp like they are hunting after redfish, which is super
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, I mean, I just
Yeah.
think there's like a huge
to catch
untapped
fish. To catch?
fishery,
Totally.
like
Yeah,
frontier.
I mean-
Let's call it a frontier. I'll call it a frontier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frontier.
Which is good. Maybe that's the way people like it. Just, you know.
Yeah.
But go enjoy it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Also
Explore.
interesting about the Nipigon catch and release program.
Yeah, that's great.
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
You don't hear about stories like that a lot in Ontario, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know, like everybody adopting catch and release on a really big body of water and having huge success. That's great.
Yeah, it's
Imagine if that was just like every steelheader down here was just like, yeah, let's just do that kind of thing, you know? Like
Mhm.
how many like that must have a big impact.
Yep.
On the fishery, right? Like
Well, to Gord's point, like fish don't live that long relative to us, you know. So a few life cycles, you know.
yeah, like that slot. Like have one fish you can keep in a certain slot, and that's it. Like that's a good system. You can keep a fish, sure.
Eric
but-
does it at Esnagami with the walleye, right?
That's
And
the
we-
thing,
We
yeah.
all know what the kind of fishery.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're not saying not to keep fish. We're just
Yeah.
saying maybe there's a better way at the whole slot size. Because I've been seeing it. I've been following this because it's like, you know, sitting at home, not doing anything. I've been watching an ice fishing season's on, and I've been watching this guy on YouTube. I don't know if other people out there watch him. His name's Clayton Schick. Shout out Clayton Schick. And he's this really
That's
nice
funny.
guy on YouTube that
Yeah.
ice fishes, and he's in like kind of northern Manitoba, and they have some like decent regs up there from what I've been seeing, like in terms of fish you can keep and all that. The fish he catches are insane, like crazy fish, man. Like just the nicest Lakers and walleye I've ever seen.
Mhm. And he
Um,
documents the whole thing.
Yeah, he does as a
Yeah.
YouTuber. But it's just nice to see, you know, maybe there are better ways at slot size and keeping fish and all that stuff, you know. But it's cool, like you say, big body of water,
Yeah.
everybody adopting that,
Yeah.
like crazy that happened on the Nipigon. It's like, oh wow, everybody's just in agreement. It's like, okay, we're gonna do that. Like that's great, collective, you know,
That's great.
passion and care. Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, thanks Gord for coming on. Oh yeah, what would you? Yeah,
Yeah.
No, this.
not wrong.
This. I don't know why I'm saying this, but you can cut it out. Just maybe flag
Like,
it.
I don't want to cut anything out.
Yeah. No, because your internet cut out, but I'm assuming that on your end
Oh.
it's being recorded. So I'm probably
On my
not-
end, it's being recorded
Yeah.
because we're on a new recording system. So hopefully everybody's enjoying the audio quality.
Oh yeah.
we're on
this-
a new platform called Riverside, which is kind of aptly named.
Yeah, I mean, how awesome that a podcast app is called Riverside for us. You know what I'm saying?
It's great. Yeah.
So
and
this is our
hopefully the
first. This
sound's
will be
a
our
lot
first
better.
episode with the new
The new
tech,
sys.
and this is how we're
Yeah.
gonna go moving forward,
Mhm.
which is great because we can use our super cool microphones because we're never
Yeah.
gonna get back in a studio ever again. it
Ever
seems.
again. Yeah.
Hey,
100%.
so on that note, I don't know, although if it even matters, but if you want to match with us, I can grab your headphones because I gotta grab that
Oh,
Out
yeah.
of Doors magazine.
It's kind of fun. Yeah. We can
So-
figure that out.
Yeah. One last thing about the magazine is, guys, you can win a trip to Esnagami. You want to win
Yes.
this trip.
Yeah.
You want to win this trip. Like,
yeah.
this is a trip
fun.
you want to win.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like a week at Esnagami Lodge for free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
win that.
So go Google Ontario Out of Doors, go to their website, click the show notes on our Podbean cast, whatever. We'll post about it. It's actually the link to it's on our Instagram in our bio. You can just click that, and it'll take you to where you need to enter. Because you can win a trip to Esnagami Lodge, and you can go meet Eric, and you can go fish the ridiculous fishery that he has up there, and have a blast. So,
hey,
yeah,
we're
check
going
that
back
out.
there this year. So if you get to pick your dates,
Oh yeah, come up with
Come
us.
up with us.
Hey, that'd be fun.
that might be fun.
We'll have some beers, or some whatever whiskey, some
We'll have
40
some beers.
Creek
You
if
can
like.
hear our shitty jokes in real time.
Or if
And,
you prefer a bottle of wine, we can have some wine. Whatever you wish. It'll be fun. Yeah. What else do we have to say?
I have something to say. At the beginning of the interview, I got a massive nosebleed. I don't know if anybody noticed.
Really?
That.
I didn't notice the blood. I just thought you were
What?
dabbing your little nostril.
I was like,
I
my
didn't notice at all.
I was like, my left nostril was starting to leak. I was like, do I have the sniffles? And then I looked at my hand and it was just blood. I was like,
Dry
uh-oh.
air, man.
It's
the
so dry
air.
in my apartment. Oh my god.
Do you have radiators?
Yes.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like a dried up newt over here. Can barely move.
Yeah.
It's awful, eh, Elma?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, my mom. My mom was messaging me. Sorry, she just wants to know. How I'm doing.
Well, it's Valentine's Day. I mean, my mom
Happy
just messaged
Valentine's
me
Day.
with a big old happy Valentine's Day, so I get that, man.
Yeah.
Cute and fun.
Can you tell her,
Mhm.
Yilma, that I say
Yilma.
happy Valentine's Day because I love your mom?
Okay, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, and like we haven't met, but like tell the same for me.
Like
Well, I
one
feel
of the,
like
we had a great time in Tobago together, like having dinner with you and your mom and your dad, and that was an awesome time.
yeah, that
Awesome
was
time.
good. She's a good lady.
There you go. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Gord, thanks for coming on the show. Shout out to Elma's mom. And
Although says
have a good one, Stay safe and check out all the links, all the things. Go to Ontario Doors, win a trip. Meet us up there. Be fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
And check out Gord's writing and his
Gord's
his
writing.
like we said, he's a journalist. You can find him on CBC as well. So he's got a wealth of knowledge, clearly. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Great memory. He's like pulling dates and names. I'm
I
like,
know.
Jesus, how do you remember? I barely remember like yesterday, Like, Jesus.
I know.
That's not true.
but
You have
yeah.
a good memory.
I don't. I have a
Mitch?
terrible
Mitch
memory.
has a
Oh, does he?
terrible
About.
memory.
Oh.
Like, I don't even like Brad, honestly. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you sound insane all the time. Like, but everybody, thanks for listening, and hope you take care. That's it from me, Mitch, Aldo,
Bye, everybody.
Yelma.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.
You can find all of SoFly's content at sofly.ca. On Instagram, we're at the SoFly Crew. You can reach us at thesoflycrew@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or concerns. On Facebook, we're SoFly, and our podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.